Buddhāvataṃsaka Sutra. Book 39. Entry into the Realm of Reality. Video 13. Indriyeshvara. Thinking about the instruction of Sudarshana, applying it, passing it on, investigating it, talking about it, revealing it, contemplating it, approaching it, following it, reflecting on the principle of his teaching, entering into it, bringing it near, analyzing it, explaining it, elucidating it, pondering it, sadhana, surrounded by celestial beings, spirits, and cherubim, made his way to the city of Sumukha in the land of Shramanamandala, looking for the boy Indriyeshvara. Then, when Sadhana got to the city Sumukha, near a river junction, he saw Indriyeshvara, surrounded by 10,000 boys, playing in the sand. He went up to Indriyeshvara, paid his respects, and said, "Noble one, I have set my mind on supreme perfect enlightenment, but I do not know how an enlightening being is to learn and carry out the practice of enlightening beings." Indriyeshvara said, "I have been taught writing and mathematics by Manjushri, and have been let into the door of knowledge encompassing higher knowledge of all practical arts. So I know all the various arts and crafts and sciences in the world dealing with writing, mathematics and symbols, physiology, rhetoric, physical and mental health, city planning, architecture and construction, mechanics and engineering, divination, agriculture and commerce, conduct and manners, good and bad actions, good and bad principles, what makes for felicity and what for misery, what is necessary for the vehicles of Buddha's disciples, and individual illuminates, what is necessary for Buddhahood, and behavior linking reason and action. I know all these sciences, and I also introduce and teach them to people, and get people to study and practice them, to master and develop them, using these as means to purify, refine, and broaden people. I myself know enlightening beings' method of reckoning, which goes like this: 100,000 is a koti. A koti squared is an ayuta. An ayuta squared is an ayuta. An ayuta squared is a bimbara. A bimbara squared is a kinkara. A kinkara squared is an agra. An agra squared is a pravara. A pravara squared is a mapara. A mapara squared is a tapara. A tapara squared is a sima. A sima squared is a yama. A yama squared is a nima. A nima squared is an aviga. An aviga squared is a mrigava. A mrigava squared is a viraga. A viraga squared is a vigava. A vigava squared is a samkrama. A samkrama squared is a visara. A visara squared is a vibhaja. A vibhaja squared is a vijangha. A vijangha squared is a vishoda. A vishoda squared is a vivaha. A vivaha squared is a vibhakta. A vibhakta squared is a vikata. A vikata squared is an ilana. An ilana squared is an avana. An avana squared is a thavana. A thavana squared is a viparya. A viparya squared is a samaya. A samaya squared is a viturna. A viturna squared is a hituna. A hituna squared is a vikara. A vikara squared is a vyavasta. A vyavasta squared is an abhyudgata. An abhyudgata squared is a vishishta. A vishishta squared is an ilamba. An ilamba squared is a harita. A harita squared is a vikshobha. A vikshobha squared is a hilita. A hilita squared is a luri. A luri squared is an aloka. An aloka squared is a drishvanta. A drishvanta squared is a hituna. A hituna squared is an ella. An ella squared is a dumela. A dumela squared is a kshemu. A kshemu squared is an aluda. An aluda squared is a balyuda. A balyuda squared is a samada. A samatha squared is a visada. A visada squared is a pramatra. A pramatra squared is an amantra. An amantra squared is a brahmantra. A brahmantra squared is a gamantra. A gamantra squared is an amantra. An amantra squared is an ahimantra. An ahimantra squared is a vimantra. A vimantra squared is a paramantra. A paramantra squared is a shivamantra. A shivamantra squared is a delu. A delu squared is a velu. A velu squared is a gelu. A gelu squared is a kelu. A kelu squared is a nelu. A nelu squared is a belu. A belu squared is a kelu. A kelu squared is a celu. A celu squared is a pelu. A pelu squared is a melu. A melu squared is a sarada. A sarada squared is a barudu. A barudu squared is a kiludu. A kiludu squared is a maludu. A maludu squared is a samalu. A samalu squared is an athiva. An athiva squared is a kamala. A kamala squared is an agava. An agava squared is an ataru. An ataru squared is a helura. A helura squared is a mirahu. A mirahu squared is a charana. A charana squared is a dhana. A dhana squared is a pramada. A pramada squared is a nigama. A nigama squared is a nupavarta. An nupavarta squared is a nirdesha. A nirdesha squared is an akshaya. An akshaya squared is a sambhuta. A sambhuta squared is a mamama. A mamama squared is an avada. An avada squared is an utpala. An utpala squared is a padma. A padma squared is a sankhya. A sankhya squared is a gati. A gati squared is a nupama. A nupama squared is an alpamya. An alpamya squared is incalculable. An incalculable to the fourth power is measureless. A measureless to the fourth power is boundless. A boundless to the fourth power is incomparable. An incomparable to the fourth power is uncountable. An uncountable to the fourth power is unequaled. An unequaled to the fourth power is inconceivable. An inconceivable to the fourth power is immeasurable. An immeasurable to the fourth power is unspeakable. An unspeakable to the fourth power is unspeakably unspeakable. And unspeakably unspeakable squared is untold. He counted out the grains of sand in the miles-wide mass of sand before him, telling how many grains of sand there were, and how many unspeakable numbers of grains of sand there were. Then, having indicated this by these conventions of enumeration, he said, "This counting device serves enlightening beings for the succession of worlds. By this method of counting they count the multitudes of worlds in the 10 directions. This method of counting serves enlightening beings in indicating the worlds in the 10 directions in an orderly continuum. By this method of counting, enlightening beings count the string of names of the worlds in the 10 directions. As in the case of indications of the string of names of worlds, in the same way this method of counting serves enlightening beings in indicating the successions of names of eons, Buddha's doctrines, sentient beings, actions, and indeed everything in the 10 directions. I know this light of knowledge of enlightening beings which is characterized by higher knowledge of all arts and sciences. How can I know the practice, tell of the virtues, indicate the range, show the sphere, describe the power, show the will, elucidate the preparation, explain the commitment, show the conduct, illumine the purity of transcendent ways, expound the purity of accomplishment, tell of the sphere of concentration, or approach the light of knowledge of the enlightening beings who know the number of all worlds, who know the number of all modes of spiritual practice, who know the number of pasts, presents, and futures, who know the number of all sentient beings, who know the number of all bodies of doctrine, who know the number of enlightenments of all Buddhas, and who command the wheel of names of all the teachings. South of here is a city called Buddhāvataṃsaka, where lives a lay devotee named Prabhuta. Go ask her how an enlightening being is to learn and carry out the practice of enlightening beings. Having heard the words of the spiritual benefactor, Sadhana was thrilled and overjoyed. He paid his respects and took leave of Indriyeshvara, having obtained the treasure of will that is rare and most difficult to obtain, setting out to act benevolently toward all, freely able to perceive the succession of emergence of Buddhas, intent on the wisdom to clarify the sphere of the teaching, intent on showing the various means of emancipation everywhere, aware of past, present, and future without confusion, his mind an inexhaustible ocean of virtue, in control of the light of great knowledge, having broken open the doors of confinement in the city of mundane existence. Prauta. Then, receiving the multitude of teachings of spiritual benefactors as the ocean receives torrential rains without being filled, the sprouts of his faculties raised from clear ground and developed by the rays of light of knowledge of sun-like spiritual benefactors, his body and mind cooled by the aura of light of teaching of the full moon of spiritual benefactors, having drunk the water of the teachings of spiritual benefactors like a herd of animals burnt by the heat of the summer sun. The lotuses of his mind opened like a blooming lotus pond by the instructions of spiritual benefactors, like water flowing from the snowy mountains, his being illumined by the practice of the precious instructions of spiritual benefactors, like a treasure island covered with jewels, successful in accumulating knowledge and virtue according to the instructions of spiritual benefactors, like a great tree laden with flowers and fruits, having an abundant store of learning of instructions of spiritual benefactors, like a great cloud in the sky produced by the sport of dragons, a radiant mountain peak of various virtues arising from the instruction of spiritual benefactors, like the wonderful peak of the world of the 33 heavens, full of pure qualities produced by the instructions of spiritual benefactors, overpowering and invincible like the god Indra surrounded by the deities of the 33 heavens who conquers the leaders and hordes of titans. Sadhana made his way to the city Buddhāvataṃsaka, looking for the devotee Prabhuta. He was told by the people there that Prabhuta was in her house in the middle of town. Sadhana went to Prabhuta's house and stood before the entrance with his hands joined in respectful salutation. He saw that her house was very large, covered with precious ornaments, with doors on all four sides, arrayed with countless jewels, the result of the development of inconceivable virtues. Entering the house and looking around, he saw the devotee Prabhuta in a jeweled chair, young, slim, fresh, in the blossom of youth, radiantly beautiful, her hair hanging loose, wearing no ornaments on her body, clothed in pure white garments. Except for Buddhas and enlightening beings, no one came to that house whom she did not overwhelm by her appearance, her mastery of mind, her radiance, her voice, or her splendor. All who saw Prabhuta, whether human or celestial beings, thought of her as a teacher. Also, in her house were arrayed 10 million seats, superior to those of celestials and humans, perfected by the deeds of enlightening beings. There were no provisions of food or drink, or clothing or jewelry or other accoutrements to be seen in the house, except for a vessel placed before her. He also saw 10,000 ladies like goddesses standing before her, wearing celestial clothing and ornaments, with pleasing voices like goddesses. Those ladies, her attendants, responding to her word, waited on her, watched her, kept their attention on her, respectfully saluted her, looked at her, bowed to her, and expressed their reverence for her. The fragrance from their bodies perfumed the whole city, and all who smelled the fragrance became free from malice, free from hostility, non-violent, free from envy and jealousy, free from guile and deceitfulness, disciplined, mentally unobstructed, free from depression and elation, even-minded, kind, altruistic, restrained in mind, charitable. And whoever heard their voices became happy, joyful, and humble in mind. And whoever saw them felt themselves freed of lust. Then Sadhana paid his respects to Prabhuta and politely said to her, "Noble one, I have set my mind on supreme perfect enlightenment, but I do not know how to learn and carry out the practice of enlightening beings. I hear you give enlightening beings instruction, so I beg of you to tell me how an enlightening being is to learn and carry out the practice of enlightening beings." She said, "I have attained an enlightening liberation which is an inexhaustible treasury of manifestations of good. From this one vessel I satisfy sentient beings of various tastes with food conforming to their wishes, with various sauces and spices, of various colors and aromas. From this one vessel I satisfy even 100 beings with whatever food they wish, even 1,000 beings, 100,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000,000. I satisfy untold numbers of sentient beings of various tastes with whatever foods they wish, gratifying and pleasing them and making them happy, and yet this vessel does not diminish or run out. In this way, even if as many sentient beings as atoms in a continent, or 4 continents, or 1,000 world universe, or 1,000,000 world universe, or 1,000,000,000 world universe, or even if as many sentient beings as atoms in untold Buddha lands come to me with various tastes, I satisfy, please, and delight them with foods according to their wishes, with various sauces, spices, colors, and aromas, yet this vessel never diminishes or runs out, it is never depleted or exhausted. Even if all the beings in all worlds in the 10 directions, with various tastes and desires, should come to me, I would satisfy them all with whatever food they wished. And as with food, so also would I satisfy and please them with various kinds of drinks, various delicacies, various couches, various clothing, various flowers, various garlands, various fragrances, various incenses, various unguents, various aromatic powders, various jewels, various ornaments, various conveyances, various parasols, various banners, various pennants, and various kinds of utensils. Furthermore, any Buddhist disciples or individual illuminates in their last embodiment in one world in the East who attain the fruit of discipleship or individual illumination all do so after having eaten my food. And as this is true in one world in the East, so it is true in 100 worlds, 1,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000,000, 1,000,000,000,000, 1,000,000,000,000, in as many worlds as atoms in a continent, as many worlds as atoms in 4 continents, as many worlds as atoms in 1,000 world universe, as many worlds as atoms in 1,000,000 world universe, as many worlds as atoms in 1,000,000,000 world universe, up to as many worlds as atoms in untold Buddha lands, all those who realize the fruit of discipleship or individual illumination do so after having eaten my food. And as this is true in so many worlds to the east, so it is true in the worlds in all 10 directions. The enlightening beings in one world in the east, who are bound to attain enlightenment in one life, all sit on the site of enlightenment, conquer the demons, and realize supreme perfect enlightenment after having eaten my food. The same is true of the enlightening beings to realize enlightenment in one life in up to as many worlds as atoms in untold Buddha lands in each of the 10 directions. They all sit on the site of enlightenment, conquer the demons, and realize supreme perfect enlightenment after having eaten my food. Do you see these 10,000 women, my companions? Beginning with these, there are countless tens of hundreds of thousands of women whose practice is the same as mine, who are one in vows, one in roots of goodness, one in ways of emancipation, one in purity of devotion, equal in purity of mindfulness, one in purity of deportment, equal in infinity of understanding, equal in attainment of spiritual faculties, equal in pervasive awareness, equal in range of sphere of action, equal in penetration of spiritual principles, equal in ascertainment of meanings, equal in elucidation of doctrines and meanings, equal in purity of form, equal in infinity of power, equal in unsurpassed energy, equal in voicing truth, equal in purity of voice, equal in purity of qualities in all manners by manifesting infinite virtues, equal in purity of action by virtue of purity of results of irreproachable actions, equal in pervasive kindness by virtue of saving all sentient beings, equal in pervasive compassion by virtue of tirelessly developing all sentient beings, equally pure in physical action by virtue of appearing to all sentient beings in forms that please them, equally pure in speech in usage expressing the realm of realities, equal in going to the assemblies of all Buddhas, equal in speeding to all Buddha lands, to attend all the Buddhas, equal in direct knowledge in understanding the principles of all doctrines, equal in purity of practice in attainment of all the stages of enlightening beings. These 10,000 women pervade the 10 directions in a single instant to present food to the enlightening beings who are bound to become enlightened in one lifetime, giving them food from this same vessel. They pervade the 10 directions to give food and drink to the saints and individual illuminates who are in their last existence. They go everywhere and satisfy all hungry ghosts with food. I also satisfy all the celestial beings with celestial food from this same vessel. I satisfy dragons with dragon food, spirits with spirit food, cherubim with cherub food, Titans with Titan food, birds with bird food, centaurs with centaur food, serpents with serpent food, humans with human food, and non-humans with non-human food. Come here and in a moment you shall see with your own eyes. No sooner had Prabhupada said these words than immeasurable numbers of such beings came in through the 4 doors of her house, invited by Prabhupada's standing vow. Prabhupada seated them in the places prepared and satisfied them with whatever kind of foods they wished, pleasing and delighting them. In the same way she also satisfied and pleased them with various drinks, delicacies, seats, couches, conveyances, clothes, flowers and garlands, perfumes and incenses, unguents and aromatic powders, ornaments, jeweled chariots, parasols, banners, pennants, and utensils. She satisfied all the various kinds of beings with their various kinds of food, Yet the vessel was not depleted or exhausted. It never ran out. Then Prabhupada said to Sadhana, I know this enlightening liberation, which is an inexhaustible treasury of manifestations of good. How can I know the practice or tell the virtues of enlightening beings whose goodness is inexhaustible because of the endlessness of the ocean of good, who are like the sky in that they have produced a vast store of good, who are like wish-fulfilling jewels in that they fulfill the wishes of all sentient beings, who are mountains of good because they protect the roots of goodness of all beings, who are great clouds of good as they shower jewel rain on all beings, who are superintendents of the great treasury of good in that they open the door of the city of truth, who are great lamps of good in that they dispel the darkness of destitution for all sentient beings. South of here is a city called Mahasambhava, where a householder named Vidvan lives. Go ask him how an enlightening being is to learn and carry out the practice of enlightening beings. Then Sadhana, paying his respects to the devotee Prabhupada, looking at her again and again without tiring of the sight of her, took his leave and departed. Continue to video 14.